This essay will be looking at how gender is represented within gaming characters, looking at old versus new video games. When taking a look at video games and the characters within them, there is a defined underlying theme of the roles that the characters tend to play. First and foremost, old video games primarily represent males within them. There are hardly any females depicted. Older video games had depicted males as being primarily dominant, physically capable, and carrying a weapon of some sort, whether it be a gun or a knife. Whereas women, on the other hand, are seen as secondary characters, needing to be helped or sexually appealing, if they are depicted within the video games at all. Though as video games have progressed, there has been a noticeable shift in the newer video games to change this representation of males and females, where males gear away from the stereotype and females become more prominent as well. Research by Miller and Summers show that there is a great difference between the amount of men versus women characters within video games, and that women that are present have minor roles and are more likely not a major character to be played. For example, for every one female, there are 5.3 males. Males are depicted as being muscular and powerful, whereas females are typically attributed as being sexy and attractive. Research by Miller and Summers also show that males are seen as heroes 58.1% of the time, females are seen as heroes 34.6% of the time, males are seen as supplemental characters 14.5% of the time, and females are seen as supplemental characters 30.8% of the time. Showing a great divide between the sexes, as even males have significantly greater number of abilities than females. Take a look at older video games to start, as D-Test examines the three popular Nintendo games and Sega Genesis games. In both of these types of video games, women were depicted as needing to uphold beauty standards and are seen as victims or needy. Men, on the other hand, needed to protect or defend the women, or in some cases use violence against them. Only 15% of the video games portrayed women as being heroes or action characters. Looking at Power Rangers, for example, women were shown in stereotypical female colors of pink or yellow. The same trend arises in Super Mario 2 1998 version, where Princess Peach sports a long pink dress and a tiara, being seen as delicate. Or moving on to the depictions in Mortal Kombat 2 1984, where women wore thigh-high boots, revealing leotards, and their faces were hidden. There's also The Adventures of Bayou Bill 1989, looked at by D-Test, where women have low-cut dress, big breasts, and have a knife to their throat by males. And again, the same trend is found in Double Dragon 1985, where females have big breasts and are helpless, where men are either the villain or the big buff man helping. D-Test found that women were seen as the damsel in distress 21% of the time and were over-victimized. These stereotypical trends of females and males continued into early 2000s as well. Taking a look at newer video games in the early 2000s, the same pattern seemed to be present for males, where they carried a gun often and had a large weapon such as a sword or a gun. As Dickerman and Christensen and Curl McLean had stated, both the hero and the villain are typically large and imposing with prominent musculature, scars, an eye patch, or other defining features of previous violence. Also claiming that women were seen as the princess or damsel, portrayed as helpless, incapable of violence, and often wearing tightly fitting or otherwise revealing clothing that fails to contain her impossibly proportioned body. Examples of this are seen in Neverwinter Heights 2002, which adheres to the societal expectations of beauty. Also looking at Lara Croft in Tomb Raider 2006, who still adheres to societal expectations of beauty. Although there's a slight shift here in the changing of the roles of women within video games. Looking at, for example, now the video game The Last of Us, which is gearing away from the stereotypical representations of males and females within video games, as now you have a heroine journey which both male and females work together, and the male provides a more sensitive role rather than tough, rough, and violent. Another example of this shift is through the game of Hellblade, where the primary character is that of a female, and her trials and journeys depicted throughout. Following is a clip of a review of the game.
Senua's sacrifice, grasping for a touchstone to understand the experience. It unfolds like a beautiful, dark, tense visual novel, placing the excellently raw human performance of its main character front and center on her journey into the land of the Northmen. Her story is one of confusion, sadness, fear, and loss, and it's punctuated by moments of beauty and strength that has left a lasting impression on me.
As you can see through the previous video, the emotions and trials of the female character are explored throughout the entirety of the game. Another example of the newer depiction of females within video games is the game Life is Strange, where the main female character not only has a different visual appearance, such as different hair color or clothing, she also goes through different trials and triumphs within the game, and this is depicted and explicitly shown. Finally, there's Tomb Raider 2013, which shows a strong female who goes through different trials and triumphs that are physically taxing. Thereby, there is a clear distinction between how gender is represented within the characters in video games in old versus new video games. Both genders in old video games seem to adhere to societal standards where men were dominant, muscular, and claimed the primary role, yet females were hardly ever depicted, and if so, they were seen as sexually appealing and the damsel in distress. Though as games have progressed, there has been a noticeable attempt at shifting these representations of genders within video games. Thank you for watching my take on how gender is represented in gaming characters.